Happening, folks? Welcome to the channel. For any of you that don't know, I'm a huge fan of anything to do with the occult, so naturally I was very excited when I found out about today's movie. And then I watched it, and about 5 minutes into it, I thought, I'm starting to lose my mind. Malum is a 2023 horror film written and directed by your mom. Only kidding, just seeing if you're paying attention. The movie's actually written by Anthony de Blasi, and it stars Jessica Sula, Cheney Morrow, and Kevin Wayne. If this movie immediately reminds you of 2014's The Last Shift, don't worry, you're not losing your mind. Writer-director Anthony de Blasi was offered the chance to make another movie within the Last Shift universe with a bigger budget, and for reasons best known to himself, he just decided to retell the exact same story. Again, with some minor differences. Today, I'm going to be summarizing Malum's plot in the way that it presented itself to me. As we get further into it, if it starts feeling like a non-stop string of events, don't hate me. I'm just trying to convey a sentiment in as authentic a manner as possible. And then I'll go through my usual good bits and shite bits sections, and we will discuss the differences between the two movies, and then we can decide together whether or not de Blasi wasted his time and money remaking his own movie. Let's go. The movie opens with police evidence in the form of some 8mm footage of the Malum flock compound, and we're shown a throne with a fairly standard pentagram to confirm we're dealing with some sort of a cult. A group of young folks are shown swimming and frolicking in a field before things turn terrible for a few of the girls. The cult members tie them up, and the cult leader, John Malum, says, "We pray in the temple of the low god," before the tied-up girls meet their ends. And then the camera cuts to a close-up of Police Captain Will Lauren, who's either lost in the memory of the event itself or in the video of it. We find out Captain Lauren saved 3 girls in a raid at the Malum compound. When the article pans down to show the cult leader, John Malum, his face is blurred out again as it was in the 8mm footage. When his team applaud him for saving the 3 girls, the captain seems preoccupied with the fact he could have saved all 4 if he just acted quicker. A few minutes later, we see the captain wandering the halls whistling that same cult hymn we heard at the start of the movie, and he proceeds to shoot 2 officers with a big gapy grin across his face. Then he tells the rest of the officers to tell his wife and daughter he's sorry and he loves them and that he's safe in the arms of his master, which is a lyric from the cult song. And then he eats his own gun. And exactly a year later, we meet his daughter Jessica, who's in uniform and reciting her police oath from the officer's handbook. She visits her father's grave, and while she's telling us it's her first night on duty, her mother surprises her from behind. Jessica refers to her mother as Diane, so we know there's obviously distance between them. When I was 7, I insisted my parents get me a Yoda doll for Christmas in addition to the collectible figure I already had. And when it wasn't there on Christmas morning, I decided to call my mother Harriet as a sign of protest. Well, I called her that once, and then she punched me in the face. Don't even worry about it. My family's Irish. Everything was back to normal, and we're all drinking pints together again before Christmas breakfast even hit the table at 10 a.m. Diane's disheveled and drunk, and she wants to stop Jessica from going into the police, but Jessica says she needs to in order to understand what happened to her father. When the pair part company, we see the cult symbol painted onto the back of Will's tombstone. Jessica's volunteered to work the final shift in the station her father died in, and as she's pulling past the new station, the place is teeming with cult members singing that same song in support of their dead cult leader. And inside the old station, she finds Officer Cohen kicking basketballs at nothing and screaming the house down. And when Jessica arrives and startles him, he inspects her close up, presumably to make sure she's real. When he finds out who Jessica's father was, he gives her an earful and warns her against going into the holding section. And after he leaves, Jessica takes a tour of the facilities and finds her father's locker. And then the door buzzer rings, and a big, scary vagrant screams at her. So he screams, wanting to know where his girl is, and then he relieves himself on the door, and the urine gets inside, which might be relevant later. She finds bolt cutters, and she has a go at her dad's locker, but the phone rings before she can get in, and the call's possibly from a cult member who calls Jessica a little piggy. So Jessica calls the news station to get the call traced, but the officer says they're too busy to help her out. Her frustration gets the best of her, and she shoots the lock off, and inside she finds a photo of her and her dad, along with files on the missing girls he saved and a load of articles on the cult itself. Then somebody leaves a pig with a cult symbol painted on his back outside the door, so she brings it inside. Then the big scary vagrant breaks in and holds up a pair of shoes and an evidence bag, possibly indicating he's the father of one of the girls killed by the cult. So she tases chases him and tries putting him into the holding cells where she was told to absolutely not go. Then the ghost of Jessica's father shines a flashlight on her and tells her he's still here. And then a load of hanged bodies drop into the shot and Jessica shites her police pants. So she phones Officer Cohen and he screams at her. And then while she's shuffling through a bunch of cult paperwork, a prostitute gets tossed out of a car outside the building, so Jessica brings her in too. And while she's cleaning her up, the prostitute tells her a bunch of cult members hung themselves in the holding cells a while back. And then she recites lyrics from the song we're all accustomed to by now and has a hissy fit, and then Jessica kicks her out. And then the phone rings again, and this time the caller tells Jessica her father started something very important that they're all going to finish tonight. They also tell her John Malum, the cult leader's still here. So Jessica calls the new police station again and learns all 3 girls her father saved have been abducted again. And then Jessica's mother calls and has a drunk rant. And then she finds the cult symbol painted on a firing range target. And then this demon chases her, and going from his jacket, I'm guessing this might be John Malum, the cult leader.
That sounds like really good news for any of you who might be considering transcending this mortal coil and living as an otherworldly, ethereal, demonic entity. I mean, you get to keep your coat. Isn't that pretty cool? If you have, like, a nice jacket?
So she tries escaping the building, but the place is all chained up, so she calls the new station again, and they tell her to calm down when she says she can't finish her shift. So she does calm down, for about a half a second. Then the laptop shows Jessica's father bringing John Malum and his girls into the station almost exactly like the Charles Manson family, and John says he's going to come back from the dead to destroy Will and everything he loves. And then his Manson family girls act like highly exaggerated versions of cult members. And right in the middle of things, John says, "The devil on my shoulder just isn't what you think it is." And then Will stands up as if he's seen something over John's shoulder. Then Jessica hallucinates an entire scene with her taken away in a body bag, but she brushes it off as quickly as it came. And then Officer Price and his partner come to get the vagrant from holding, and Price tells Jessica before her father killed everyone, he told him that John Malum was still somewhere in the building. And then he shows her where her father's shotgun's being kept, only he's not really showing her where her father's shotgun's being kept because none of this is actually happening. And then Jessica's suddenly present at her own baptism in Malum's cult. And then Jessica's teenage mother gives a speech right into the camera explaining parts of the storyline pertaining to Jessica's dad being a cop. Then she lets the vagrant out and his daughter Betty's voice calls him towards a room. And then I think the pig eats him. And then Betty's body chases Jessica, but it's actually the pig. And then Jessica's mother arrives and tells her her father saved them from the cult and that Jessica was meant to be a big part of something important. Then her mother wanders off after the image of her dead husband. Then a cult member holds one of the rescued girls at gunpoint whilst delivering a speech about Jessica being the one Malum has chosen. Then the cult member shoots the hostage, so Jessica shoots her, and then dozens of cult members come after her from the back of the gym. So she locks them in the gym, and then the vagrant reappears with half his leg chewed off by the pig, and he attacks her, so she shoots him. Then the phone rings again, and it's the new police station, except it isn't at all the new police station because the phone's been disconnected this whole time, and Jessica's apparently been speaking with ghosts. And then the police show up again, but they're not really the police again, and then she's attacked again, and then she finds another of the rescued girls again, but a cult member's already done her in. And then she speaks to her dead father, and then she shoots more of the cult members, and then she finds the final missing girl, but she can't save her either, and when she's separated from her head, Jessica's covered in 11 liters of the girl's blood, which was pretty cool, for the record. Then the Manson girls reappear in demonic form, and the 2 dead police officers from the opening scene are on dog leashes, and then the cult surrounds her and John Malum's on a throne. Except not really, as that was another hallucination. Then another demon appears and she shoots it dead, but that one was actually her mother. Then all the cult members laugh at her, and this demon says something you can't understand until you play the movie backwards, like this.
One final action. You, Jessica.
And she complies, and then she appears at Malum's side, apparently as the queen he vowed to take since before Jessica was born.
And there you have it, folks, all of the events crammed into Malum's hour-and-a-half runtime. It's far from being a bad movie, I'm not suggesting that, but if you feel like you've just been bombarded with the story's events, that's exactly how it feels watching it. Let's check out the good bits.
Movies confined to a single location like this one often struggle to maintain an atmosphere throughout their runtimes. Compound that with the fact that 80% of this movie features Jessica Sula by herself, and you have to acknowledge it couldn't have been easy to keep things creepy, which they did. The movie also makes the most out of the soon-to-be abandoned police station setting by contrasting the bright office environments with the dark and disturbing down-the-hall shots. And that helps drive home the idea this rookie cop's all by herself overnight in a strange place. That by itself is enough to scare a lot of people without even having to introduce all the other cult elements. And finally, given the nature of this story and its examination of the occult and the afterlife, Malum really has you guessing what's real and what isn't, which in a way is kinda what's at the heart of the afterlife debate. And it does it so well, I actually gave up trying to figure out where the reality was about halfway through the story. And having said that, too much of a good thing? Well, when I said I gave up trying to differentiate between real and imaginary, unfortunately, that wasn't a compliment. De Blasy's aim of blurring the line between reality and fantasy in this movie was way overdone. You're supposed to make the audience question what they think they've seen or might have heard, but instead, I had to quit trying because it was all so cranked up, literally none of it felt real. I was no longer grounded, and by removing that anchor to reality, it removes the fear because if it's all an illusion, none of it matters. And for it being Jessica's first night on the job, she handled herself like a decorated, seasoned veteran. She never fumbled, she never faltered with a crazy lunatic twice her size, she never even missed with her gun, not even when she was shooting a quarter-inch bar off a lock from a distance. And given the night she had, her face was emotionless. Every individual event she went through would have had a hardened cop in hysterics, but she seemed completely unfazed. This was her facial expression 99% of the screen time. Whether you realize it or not, the actor's emotions lead your own. If they're not scared, neither are we. I also struggled to understand her motivations. Did she join the police so she could work a single shift in the building her father died in so she could find out what happened to him? Was she banking on finding evidence in his locker a year later? Did the police not tell the family everything that happened in excruciating detail? And if not, why not? Did they somehow hold his wife and daughter accountable for him going insane with no previous instances of anything similar on his stellar work record? The idea they'd keep this kind of information from his surviving relatives seems preposterous. The cult angle also felt overdone, and none of the actors had any subtlety about them. John Malum's emotional outburst felt like a photocopy of Brad Dourif's Exorcist 3. The Manson Girls ripoff felt obvious and way overdone, and the most frustrating thing in the world is watching actors trying to act crazy. Getting it right takes a good bit of talent, and when it's done properly, it doesn't look anything like this. Also, the interrogation footage at the end felt tacked on, and the flashbacks on the laptop and in Jessica's head felt like nothing more than de Blasy cramming in as much explanation as he could before his second shot at this movie came to an end. And finally, as I kind of mentioned at the start, this movie failed to pace itself. It felt like one event after the next, non-stop from the minute she stepped inside the station. Movies aren't short stories. They're not half-hour television episodes. You need ups and downs or else your ability to feel things gets dulled. Compound that with the fact I gave up trying to understand what was actually happening at the 50-minute marker, and this movie felt unnecessarily messy to me.
In the off chance you haven't seen Last Shift, I'm pretty sure you can watch it for free here on YouTube. Don't quote me. I'll leave the ending out of this review because they are significantly different. As for the rest of it,
Lots of Malum is shot for shot, line for line identical to Last Shift, which I'm guessing means de Blasy just wanted to polish his original film. Personally, I don't understand that. I'd always rather create something new, especially if I was lucky enough to have somebody offer me the money to do it. But I suppose I'm not in his headspace, so maybe I shouldn't judge. In Last Shift, Jessica's assigned the shift and she doesn't understand why she's there, whereas Malum's Jessica requested it specifically, and fundamentally that accounts for the majority of the differences between the two films. In both versions of the movie, the lead characters felt way too competent and confident on their first ever shift. There's a treasure trove of tension inherent to a rookie cop with a new gun under extraordinary pressure, and for whatever reasons, de Blasy completely failed to exploit that tension in both versions of the film. Having said that, both leads held up the entire movie by themselves. I just wish Malum's Jessica would have shown some emotion or vulnerability the way Last Shift's did. Last Shift also also leaves a lot of what's happening to the viewer's imaginations. We're told just enough to explain bits and pieces of what's going on, and the rest of it's kind of up to us. Whereas Malum spends the final 30 minutes of the movie telling you what's happening and why it's happening, and I think he handled this aspect of it way better in his initial attempt. Malum has more violence and gore, and the cult members and demon aesthetics are better done, but I didn't find that lacking in First Shift. And that makes me wonder if most of de Blasi's focus in this remake was on the special effects. So, should you watch Malum if you haven't seen it already, or should you watch Last Shift first? Or if you've already seen Malum and you haven't seen Last Shift, or so, should you, fuck it.
De Blasi was offered money to create something new within the Last Shift universe. Do I think it was worth the time and the money and the effort to just redo the Last Shift instead? No, I don't. I didn't get enough out of the new movie to justify watching the first one again. He seems like a creative enough guy. I would rather have seen something new from him, and failing that, a sequel or a prequel or a spin-off from The Last Shift would have been way better than just repeating what he'd already done. But that's just how I feel. I do not like repetition. It bores me. Why don't you tell me what you think down in the comments? Thank you for watching as always, and until next time, folks.
It's me, Johnny, from that video you just loved, and I know you loved it because you're still here, and seeing as you are still here, you should probably go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe, and seeing as you just smashed me in the face, you should probably do something nice to make up for it, like maybe watching this next video. Do it!